My sister applauded when Dad slapped me at a party of 30. That night, I made a call that destroyed them all. Now they're begging. My name is Claire. I'm 32, and I've learned the hard way that blood does not always imply loyalty. However, sometimes the best revenge is simply allowing people to face the consequences of their own acts. It all started with what was supposed to be a celebration. My younger sister, Maris, had recently purchased her first home with her husband, Henry, and they were hosting a housewarming celebration. Maris, 29, had always been the golden child, marrying young, having 2 children by the age of 25, and convincing our parents that she could do no wrong despite a series of terrible financial mistakes. I, on the other hand, was the family's disappointment. Never mind that I had a great profession as a financial consultant, owned my own home, and worked tirelessly to purchase a lovely holiday property in the mountains. My parents, Gerald and Sophia, considered my life useless because I did not have children. They didn't care if I was completely content with my dog Finn or that I was independent. When I arrived, the celebration was already in full gear, with a great bottle of wine and a gift card to Maris's new place. There were about 30 individuals there, including family, friends, and neighbors. Maris was delighted to see me, giving me a big embrace and thanking me for coming. For a minute, I believed things were improving between us. I should have known better. About an hour into the celebration, Maris tapped her wine glass to draw everyone's attention. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight," she said, her voice carrying the artificial sweetness I'd grown to recognize over the years. "Henry and I are so grateful for all the support as we start this new chapter." Then her tone changed. "Actually, there's something else I wanted to discuss while we're all here together." She stared directly at me, and my stomach dropped. "Claire, could you come over here for a minute?" The crowd dispersed as I made my way to where Maris was standing. My parents flanked her on either side, and the expressions on their faces told me this wasn't going to end well. The discussions around us dwindled as more people turned to watch. "Claire," Maris said, her voice now audible to everyone. "You know how tight money has been for Henry and me, especially with the kids and the new mortgage." I nodded nervously, unsure where this was going, but experiencing a sinking sensation. "Well, we've been talking as a family," she said as she gazed at our parents. "And we think it would be really generous of you to let us use your vacation cabin. You know, since you barely use it. And we could really make some memories there with the kids." The way she phrased it sounded like a done deal, as if I had already agreed. But I hadn't. In fact, this was the first time I'd heard about it. "Maris, I actually," Mama interjected, walking forward with that smile that never left her eyes. "We think you should just give it to Maris and Henry. It would be the family thing to do." The room had become utterly silent. I could feel 30 pairs of eyes on me, waiting for a reaction. My cheeks were flushed with embarrassment and rage. "You want me to give away my vacation home?" "It's not like you're using it for its intended purpose," Dad said, his voice carrying the authoritative tone he'd used to silence my opinions all his life. "Vacation homes are for families. You just go up there alone with that dog of yours." "That dog has a name," I remarked with a high voice. "And yes, I go there to relax and recharge. It's my property that I worked hard to afford." Maris laughed, but it wasn't pleasant. "Come on, Claire. Don't be selfish. Think about my kids, your niece and nephew. They deserve to have those experiences." "They can have experiences at the dozens of other vacation rentals available," I said, attempting to maintain my composure despite the rage swelling inside me. "I'm not giving away my property." Mom's disguise slipped entirely. "You don't even have kids," she exclaimed, loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear. "What do you need a family vacation home for? Just keep walking with your dog and stop being so damn selfish." The cruelty in her voice astounded me. These were the folks who were meant to love and support me, and here they were, publicly humiliating me for not having children, which wasn't exactly my choice. I had been struggling with infertility for years, which they were aware of, yet seemed unconcerned about. Dad took a step forward, his face flushed with rage. "Your sister has kids, real responsibilities. You're just a barren waste, taking up space and resources that could benefit actual family members." The term desolate struck me as a bodily blow. I'd heard Dad make terrible words before, but never this publicly or aggressively. The crowd shuffled uncomfortably, but no one spoke anything. Nobody defended me. Maris was virtually beaming with malicious joy. "About time the family disappointment paid up," she cackled. "Maybe this will finally make you useful for something." I stood there, shaking with wrath and shame, as my own family tore me apart in front of a crowded gathering. Some looked away sheepishly, while others watched with sick interest. But no one came forward to defend me. I said no, I managed to say through tight teeth. It's my property, and I'm not giving it away. That was when Dad completely lost it. His hand shot up quickly, connecting with my cheek in a vicious backhand that knocked me backward. The sound of the smack reverberated across the suddenly silent room. And then, to my complete horror, people began clapping. Not everyone. Some looked astonished and uncomfortable, but there were enough individuals to fill the room with applause. Maris was beaming, like if she had just won an award. Mom nodded in approval. Dad fixed his shirt as if he'd just finished something essential. I stood there, fingers pressed against my burning cheek, staring at the individuals who were supposed to be my family. The treachery went deeper than any physical agony ever could. Fine, I replied calmly, my voice dead calm. I'll remember this. I went out without saying anything, leaving behind the gift I had brought and any illusions I had about my family's unconditional devotion. The drive home was a haze. Finn greeted me at the door with his usual excitement, and I buried my face in his fur, finally allowing the tears to fall. My cheek was swollen, my heart was torn, and I felt more alone than I ever had before. But when the initial shock faded, something else began to take its place. Cold, calculated anger. I had always been the responsible member of the family. While Maris made one bad financial decision after another, I had been quietly helping out. I co-signed her first auto loan when her credit was bad. I had lent her money for emergencies more times than I could remember. I'd even contributed to a down payment on the house we just celebrated, though she'd sworn me to secrecy about it. More importantly, I had been managing our parents' funds for the last 5 years. Dad had asked me to take over when Mom began to exhibit early signs of memory loss, and he was straining to keep track of things. I had sorted their finances, set up their retirement accounts, handled their taxes, and ensured that all of their payments were paid automatically. Mom's condition had deteriorated over the years, but she still had many good days, and she understood and appreciated my assistance with their finances. They absolutely trusted me with their financial lives. Maris had no idea I was involved. But here's the thing. As a financial advisor, you learn that money equals power. And power may be withdrawn just as easily as it is granted. That night, I sat down at my kitchen table with my laptop and began making calls. The first call went to the bank that held Maris's mortgage, which I helped her qualify for by co-signing and paying a portion of the down payment. I told the loan officer that, due to recent family circumstances involving financial abuse and threats, I was concerned about my continued duty as a co-signer and needed to know my options. "I understand your concerns, Miss Thompson," the officer responded. "While you can't simply remove yourself as a co-signer, you can formally request that we re-evaluate the loan based on changed circumstances. Given what you're describing, we would need to reassess whether the primary borrowers can qualify for the loan independently. And what happens if they can't re-qualify?" I was thinking about it. "We would work with them on modification options, but if no suitable arrangement can be reached, the loan could potentially be called in." Perfect. The second call was to resign my power of attorney over my parents' finances. I diligently chronicled everything over the years, and what I learned was really unsettling. Dad had been surreptitiously sending money to Maris for years, money that was supposed to be part of Mom's care fund for her deteriorating memory. The loans he gave Maris were never repaid, totaling more than $30,000. Most alarming, he was opening credit accounts in Mom's name without her knowledge or consent. Given her worsening cognitive state, I scrupulously documented everything: screenshots, bank statements, email chains, that I legally got while serving as their official financial agent before resigning. The third call went to Adult Protective Services. "I'd like to report suspected financial elder abuse," I informed the intake staff. "I have documentation of someone systematically taking money from an elderly woman with memory issues, including using her identity to open credit accounts." I provided them with everything: bank statements indicating unlawful transfers, evidence of the credit applications Dad had filled out with Mom's details, and evidence that Mom's cognitive impairment made her susceptible to this type of manipulation. "This is very serious," the worker informed me. "We'll need to start an investigation immediately. In the meantime, we'll need to freeze the accounts in question to prevent further exploitation." The fourth call went to Maris's employment. Maris worked as a bookkeeper for a small family firm, and I happened to know that her supervisor, Ms. Benton, was quite concerned about her staff financial integrity. A short check of public records revealed that Maris had multiple recent judgments against her for outstanding debts, which had not been reported during her employment. I did not make any charges. I simply asked Ms. Benton whether she was aware that Maris had hidden financial judgments that could influence her bonding insurance, which was required for her role managing the company's finances. The fifth call went to the IRS. Dad's loans to Maris, which were never repaid and totaled more than $30,000, are technically deemed taxable income because forgiven loans exceed a particular threshold. And if Maris had accepted these funds without declaring them, it would be tax evasion. I gave the IRS complete evidence of every transfer, loan, and gift that exceeded the annual limit, all of which I received legally through my duty as Mom and Dad's financial agent. But I wasn't finished yet. The sixth call went to Child Protective Services. Now, let me be clear. I would never make fraudulent claims about child welfare. But I didn't have to. Maris's social media was a goldmine of concerning information that she'd posted herself, including photos of her children in situations that CPS would undoubtedly want to investigate, posts about leaving the kids alone while she went out, and comments about using medications to help the kids sleep so she could have adult time. All information is publicly available. All screenshots are documented. All of this is actually disturbing for children's welfare. I just gathered everything and sent it along with a request for a wellness check. Henry's boss was the last person I called. Henry worked in construction, and his employer had very strong standards about domestic abuse, including insurance liability and job site safety. The images I'd taken of my damaged face, together with witness testimony from some of the more decent people at the party who were shocked by Dad's actions, provided a clear picture of a family dealing with major violence issues. I never accused Henry of anything. I merely provided facts on the family atmosphere and let the firm decide whether it fit their employment standards. Then I sat back, waiting. It did not take long. 3 days later, Maris called me and screamed. "What did you do?" She screamed into her phone. "The bank is calling our loan. They want the full balance in 30 days or they're starting foreclosure." I removed myself as a co-signer. I explained quietly. "It's my legal right. You can't do this. We'll lose the house." "You should have thought about that before you decided to publicly humiliate me and demand my property." "Claire, please." Her voice changed to a phony tenderness. "I'm sorry about the party. Things got heated. But you can't punish my kids for—" "Your kids? The ones you were so concerned about having vacation memories with? Maybe they should ask their grandfather where all their grandmother's medical money went." The line became quiet. "What are you talking about?" Maris inquired, but her tone shifted. She knew. "Adult Protective Services is very interested in Dad's financial activities," I remarked with a smile. "Apparently stealing from a dementia patient is a serious crime. Who knew?" The second domino dropped the following day, when Dad called. "Claire, we need to talk," he said, trying to appear authoritative, but with a palpable sense of panic. "There are people asking questions about Mom's accounts." "I'm sure there are," I said. I turned over all the financial records to the appropriate authorities. "You had no right." "I had every right. You gave me power of attorney, remember? That means I'm legally obligated to protect Mom's interests. Funny how that works. Those were family loans." "Those were thefts from a vulnerable adult," I explained. "The police seemed very interested in the fact that you opened credit cards in Mom's name without her knowledge." The hush lasted for quite some time. "What do you want?" he finally inquired. "I want you to face the consequences of your actions," I told you. "Just like you made me do at Maris's party." The third domino provided the most satisfaction. Maris lost her position after Ms. Benton found not only the concealed financial judgments, but also some innovative bookkeeping Maris had been using to cover her own money problems. Borrowing from petty cash with the aim to repay it later is still considered stealing, even if you intend to replace it. The fourth domino fell when the IRS audit discovered that Maris had not disclosed over $40,000 in forgiven loans and gifts over the previous 3 years. The penalties and overdue taxes were considerable, and wage garnishment occurred immediately. The fifth domino fell when CPS conducted a wellness check and discovered conditions troubling enough to warrant parenting classes and regular check-ins. Nothing that put the kids in immediate danger, but enough to make Maris and Henry extremely stressed. Henry lost his job because his company determined that his involvement in domestic violence incidents posed an unacceptable level of liability risk. However, the turmoil had only just begun. About 2 weeks after Henry lost his job, I received a call from my cousin Nina, Maris's dearest friend since childhood. Nina had attended the celebration but had not participated in the applause. In truth, she had been horrified the whole time. "Claire, I need to tell you something," Nina began, her voice quivering. "I should have said this weeks ago, but I was scared. What happened at Maris's party? It wasn't spontaneous." My blood became chilly. "What do you mean?" "They planned it," she explained. "I overheard Maris, your mom and your dad talking before the celebration started, and Maris mentioned that she had been working on getting your cabin for months. She said you were too self-centered to give it up willingly, so they had to exert familial pressure in front of witnesses. You couldn't back down." The treachery wound deeper than I had anticipated. They intended to ambush me. Maris clearly stated that if they did it publicly, I would be too embarrassed to decline. "She laughed about it, Claire," Nina explained. "She said something about how you always crumble under public pressure and that you'd probably just hand over the keys to avoid more confrontation." I felt nauseous. The entire event had been a premeditated attack intended to take advantage of my perceived weakness. They had brought 30 people to watch what they expected to be my humiliation and capitulation. "There's more," Nina added. "After you left, Maris boasted about how she'd been warming you up for months with sob stories about money problems. She claimed she had been documenting every time you supported her financially so she could use it as proof that you always cave when family members need assistance." "Evidence for what?" "She intended to take you to court if public shame did not succeed. She had this belief that because you had been financially supporting her for years, you owed it to your family to continue. She thought she could persuade a judge to order you to sign over the cabin as part of a family support agreement." The audacity was amazing. Maris had been preparing a court case to seize my possessions, using my generosity as leverage. "Why are you telling me this now?" I requested an explanation. Nina was silent for a moment. "Because Maris phoned me yesterday. She is desperate, Claire. She is considering suing you for purposely wrecking her family. She believes that everything is happening because you are vengeful, not because she and your parents violated the law. I am not sure what she is planning, but she has been inquiring about your income, employment, and where you spend your time. She's also been attempting to persuade mutual friends to join sides, telling them that you're a heartless monster who is destroying innocent children out of vengeance." This was exactly what Maris would do. Play the victim while refusing to take responsibility for her actions. But now I had advance notice, and I planned to utilize it. "Nina, I need you to do something for me," I told you. "If Maris contacts you again, I want you to record the conversation. Can you do that?" I guess so, but why?" "Because Maris is about to learn that I'm much better at this game than she ever realized." After hanging up with Nina, I spent the evening further exploring Maris's social media sites. What I discovered was a treasure trove of incriminating evidence that depicted a completely different picture than the sob story she'd been telling everyone. While she was complaining about poverty to me and our parents, she was sharing pictures of costly restaurants, new clothes, and weekend getaways. The timestamps indicated that these posts were from the same periods that she had been asking me for emergency loans. She'd been lying about her financial circumstances to get sympathy and money from family members. More problematic were the posts in which she boasted about manipulating the system and taking advantage of people who have more money than sense. She'd actually uploaded copies of text messages in which she mocked me for being such a fool for assisting her financially. I took screenshots of everything and prepared a complete file. Then I did something unfathomable to me 6 months ago. I started my own social media campaign. I published a lengthy post about what happened at Maris's party, complete with images of my damaged face and testimonials from the few nice people who observed the assault. I didn't need to embellish or lie. The reality was bad enough. But I also added Maris's own posts, which showed her luxurious lifestyle while professing financial difficulty, as well as her disparaging comments about people who aided her, all of which were previously public on her social media accounts. I let her own words reveal her personality. The post went viral in our social circles. The response was astounding. Dozens more individuals responded with their own experiences of Maris's deceptive behavior, unpaid bills, and history of leveraging family strife to get her way. Several guests stated that they felt uncomfortable during the gathering, but didn't know how to intervene. More importantly, Maris's present neighbors and Henry's old co-workers began discussing their own experiences. Maris had been borrowing money from neighbors with sob stories about medical problems and automotive troubles, which she had been telling me. She owed money all around town and was lying about why. The social media campaign also served another purpose. It established a public record of Maris's behavior, which she would find difficult to contest if she attempted to sue me. Her own statements, posts, and established habit of manipulation. Maris visited my workplace 3 days after my post went up. I was in a meeting with a client when my assistant knocked on the door. "I'm sorry to interrupt, Miss Thompson, but there's a woman here who says she's your sister. She's quite upset." Maris was pacing in the foyer, gesticulating frantically at my secretary as I watched through the glass wall of my office. She looked even worse than she did at my house, unkempt, angry, and desperate. "Please reschedule my 3 p.m. appointment," I informed my customer. "I have a family emergency to deal with." Maris started screaming the moment I arrived into the lobby. "How dare you post that garbage about me online? You're destroying my reputation." "Your reputation destroyed itself," I said quietly, well knowing that my colleagues were watching. "I simply shared the truth about what happened." "You posted private conversations. That's illegal." "I posted conversations you shared publicly on your own social media," I quickly clarified. "Nothing I shared was private." Maris's face was flushed with wrath. "You're vindictive, and everyone can see it now." "Nobody believes your victim. The comments on my post suggest otherwise," I stated. "In fact, quite a few people have reached out to share their own experiences with your behavior. You turned people against me." "I didn't have to turn anyone against you, Maris. Your actions did that all by themselves." That's when she made a crucial error. Maris took out her phone and began recording, apparently intending to catch me saying something she could use against me. "Say that again," she demanded, raising the phone. "Tell everyone how you systematically destroyed an innocent family because you're a bitter, childless woman who can't stand to see other people happy." I smiled straight into her camera. "I stopped assisting financial abuse and reported criminal activities to the proper authorities. If you wish to record this talk, let's make sure we have the facts straight." I took out my own phone and began recording. "Maris, are you denying that you and our parents plan to publicly pressure me into giving you my property? That's not. Are you denying that Dad has been stealing money from Mom's medical fund to give to you? He was helping family. Are you denying that you've been lying about your financial situation while borrowing money from multiple sources? Everyone struggles. Are you denying that you stood by and applauded when Dad assaulted me?" Maris's face turned white. She started recording hoping to catch me saying something incriminating, but instead she created evidence of her own guilt. You can't prove any of that," she said. "Actually, I can," I replied, still recording. "I have bank records, social media posts, witness statements, and now this conversation, where you haven't denied any of it." Maris realized she had walked into a trap. She stopped recording and reached for my phone, but I moved back. "Don't touch me," I declared loudly enough for everyone in the foyer to hear. "You've already been involved in one assault. I won't give you the opportunity for another." Security arrived at that point. My assistant had contacted them when Maris began screaming. Maris turned back to make one final threat as they took her out. "This isn't over, Claire. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are." "They already do," I said back. "That's the problem." The footage of our lobby confrontation, captured by building security cameras, somehow made its way to social media. Maris's aggressive actions, inability to reject the claims, and effort to take my phone created a clear picture of who was the true aggressor in this circumstance. The repercussions were quick and terrible. Maris's remaining friends distanced themselves from her. The few family members who had been attempting to remain neutral suddenly took sides, and it wasn't Maris's. Henry's parents, who had taken them in, began to raise uncomfortable questions about the type of person their son had married. But Maris wasn't finished yet. My attorney called me about a week after the office event occurred. "Claire, I've received some interesting correspondence," he told her. "Your sister has hired a lawyer, and they're threatening to sue you for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and something called tortious interference with family relationships." I nearly laughed. She's suing me for telling the truth about her behavior. Apparently. Her lawyer sent a demand letter asking for monetary damages and a public apology. They're also demanding that you cease and desist all investigation into their financial affairs. What do you think of their case? Frankly, it's crap. Everything you've revealed is either factual or based on your own documented experiences. The truth provides an absolute protection against defamation. As for the emotional distress claim, they will have a difficult time establishing it because they were the ones who coordinated a public campaign against you. In this context, interference with family relationships is not a valid cause of action. You cannot be sued for exposing criminal behavior simply because the culprits are connected to you. My attorney hesitated. However, I believe they are trying to frighten you into backing down. Maris's lawyer is presumably hoping you'll settle rather than go through the inconvenience and expense of litigation. They picked the wrong person to intimidate, I told them. File a countersuit. Within 6 weeks, the first dominoes had fallen, and my family's world was beginning to unravel. Maris and Henry faced foreclosure, bankruptcy, tax liens, job loss, and CPS involvement. Dad was being investigated for elder abuse and fraud, with criminal charges anticipated. Mom was now in a professional care facility, and her finances were safe, albeit she was grieved by Dad's deception. And me? I was sitting in my vacation cottage with Finn, drinking wine and admiring the sunset over the mountains. I'd also started spending time with Luke, a nice guy I met through a hiking club who found my independence exciting rather than intimidating. Maris called me dozens of times. So did Dad. Even relatives who had stood by and watched my humiliation began to reach out, anxious about family unity and forgiveness. I blocked them all. Mom was the only person I kept in contact with, and I visited her at the care facility on a regular basis. She was experiencing more good days than bad, and on her good days, she was grateful that I had protected her from her father's financial abuse, even if she was very grieved by his treachery. I always knew you were the strong one, she said on one of our visits. I just wish I'd been brave enough to recognize what was happening sooner. Maris visited my place 3 months after the celebration. She looked terrible, skinny, weary, with dark circles under her eyes. Her automobile was a beat-up Honda that I didn't recognize, probably all they could afford after losing their finer vehicles to repossession. "Claire, please," she murmured as I opened the door. "We need to talk." "I have nothing to say to you," I responded, beginning to close the door. "Wait," she said, placing her hand against the door. "I know you're angry, but my kids, they don't deserve this. They're going to be homeless." "Your kids are innocent," I agreed, which is why CPS is making sure they're in a safe environment with parents who can provide for them. "The parenting classes are humiliating," she added, tears streaming down her cheeks. "And Henry can't find work because of his record. Now we're losing everything." "You have already lost everything," I pointed out. "You lost it the moment you decided to attack me in front of a room full of people for not giving you my property." "It was just words, Claire. People say things when they're stressed." "Dad hit me," I quipped, "and you applauded. You stood there and clapped while your father assaulted me because I wouldn't give you something that didn't belong to you." Maris gazed down at her feet. "I know that was wrong." "No," I replied firmly. "You don't get to downplay this. You planned my public humiliation. You described me as a family disappointment. You agreed with Dad labeling me a barren waste. You cheered as he hit me. And now you want my aid since dealing with the repercussions is difficult? What can I do to make this right?" she pleaded urgently. I contemplated her question for a long time. "Nothing," I replied finally. "There is nothing you can do. You cannot take back your words. You can't take back the shame. You can't reverse the onslaught. And you can't deny that you all showed me who you truly are." "But we're family." "No," I replied, cutting her off. "Family does not treat each other in the same way as you treated me. Family members do not gang up on one another. Family members do not physically assault each other. When someone is harmed, family members do not applaud. Claire, I'm begging you." "Are you begging me now?" I observed. "But where was the humility when you demanded my vacation home? Where was your care for my family when you called me names in front of 30 people? Maris broke down and sobbed on my doorway. Part of me felt sorry for her, remembering the little sister I grew up with before she turned entitled and harsh. But the majority of me remembered standing in that room, hand placed against my burning cheek, as people celebrated my humiliation. "I'm sorry," she said through tears. "I'm sure you are," I said. You are sad that you are facing penalties. You're sorry your idea backfired. You're sorry you're losing your home, career, and nice lifestyle. But are you sorry for the way you treated me? Are you remorseful for years of taking advantage of my generosity? Are you sorry you stood by when Dad called me a barren waste? She glanced up at me, and I could see in her eyes that she was remorseful, but only because she had been apprehended, and only because her world was collapsing. She didn't apologize for hurting me. She apologized for becoming upset in return. Goodbye, Maris, I replied, closing the door. Over the next few months, I learned through common contacts that Maris and Henry had moved in with his parents in another state after losing their home when they were unable to satisfy the adjusted loan terms. Dad eventually pleaded guilty to various crimes involving elder financial exploitation. The family members who had witnessed my humiliation were now suffering with the social consequences of their association with the affair. However, the legal procedure has gone slowly, as it always does. The IRS probe lasted almost a year. The elder abuse case took 18 months to resolve in court. Maris's many financial schemes were scrutinized by multiple agencies over a 2-year period. And me? I was prospering. I'd obtained a promotion at work, thanks in part to the relief of no longer having to deal with my family's financial crisis. My social life improved considerably after I stopped spending every weekend dealing with Maris's latest emergency or Dad's demands for family reunions, where I was treated like a second-class person. Finn and I spent our weekends in the vacation cabin, hiking, reading, and enjoying the solitude. I'd started seeing Luke, a nice guy I found through a hiking group, who thought my independence was attractive rather than dangerous. Most significantly, I had understood the distinction between being alone and lonely. I'd been lonely for years, surrounded by family members who only saw me for what I could offer. Now I was alone by choice, but I had true friends, meaningful work, and a sense of self-worth that no one could take away. Finn remained my trusty friend throughout, and Luke had become a vital part of my life, someone who valued me for who I was rather than what I could give. The truth is that I did not destroy my family. They wrecked themselves with their selfishness, entitlement, and brutality. I just stopped letting them evade the repercussions of their decisions. People occasionally ask me if I feel bad about what occurred. The answer is no. I'm sad that it came to this. It's unfortunate that the individuals I loved turned out to be so different from who I believed they were. But guilty? Never. They made their decisions that night at Maris's party. They chose harshness over kindness. They selected public humiliation over private discourse. They chose violence over respect. They chose to treat me as an ATM rather than a family member. I simply decided to cease pretending that their behavior was okay. Maris was working in retail and living paycheck to paycheck when I last heard from her. Dad's legal problems were continuous, and the stress had a negative impact on his health. The extended family members who had condoned their actions were now faced with the social ramifications of being involved with elder abuse and financial fraud. As for me, I'm writing from my vacation cottage, with Finn asleep at my feet and a cup of coffee becoming cold next to my laptop. Luke is coming up later this weekend, and we're going to go to a waterfall I've been wanting to show him. My life is not perfect, but it is mine. It is authentic. It's based on true relationships with individuals who regard me for who I am, rather than what I can provide them. And what about that holiday cabin they all desired so badly? It's precisely what it was designed to be. A place where someone who has worked hard for what they have may find serenity and contentment, surrounded by people who come because they want to, not because they believe they are entitled to it. Sometimes getting even isn't the greatest way to exact revenge. Sometimes it's as simple as removing yourself from the equation and allowing individuals to face the natural consequences of their choices. Sometimes it's about creating a life so much better than your previous one that you realize the people who wounded you did you a favor by revealing who they truly were. Sometimes the best vengeance is simply living well, and I am living quite well.